This is the late Alfred Hitchcock. After the success of my series of my favourite stories, all of them too horrible to look at, which is why they're on the radio. Sredni Vashtar is not the last despairing hand in a game of Scrabble. Rather, it examines our relationship with the animal kingdom. And my producer has been kind enough to allow me to bring my little pet into the studio. Now, Cuddles, sit up and beg for your toy. Cuddles just loves his tummy being rubbed. Is a boa constrictor. No, Cuddles, put me down, sir. While Cuddles is uncoiling, here for your delectation is Sredni Vashtar. Whew. Conradin was 10 years old, and the doctor had pronounced his professional opinion that the boy would not live another 5 years. The doctor was silky and effete and counted for little, but his opinion was endorsed by Mrs. de Ropp, who counted for nearly everything. The foregoing was summed up in himself and his imagination. Without his imagination, which was rampant under the spur of loneliness, he would have succumbed long ago. Mrs. de Ropp would never, in her honestest moments, have confessed to herself that she disliked Conradin, though she might have been dimly aware that thwarting him for his good was a duty which she did not find particularly irksome. Conradin hated her with a desperate sincerity. In the dull, cheerless garden, he found little attraction. The few fruit trees that it contained were set jealously apart from his plucking. In a forgotten corner, however, almost hidden a haven, something that took on the varying aspects of a playroom and a cathedral. He had peopled it with inmates of flesh and blood. In one corner lived a ragged, plumaged Houdan hen, on which the boy lavished an affection, one of which was fronted with close iron bars. This was the abode of a large polecat ferret, which a friendly butcher boy had once smuggled, cage and all, into its present quarters, in exchange for a long-secreted whore, the woman. And one day, out of heaven knows what material, he spun the beast a wonderful name, and from that moment it grew into a god and a religion. Every Thursday, in the dim and mini Vashtar, the great ferret, red flowers in their season and scarlet berries in the winter-time were offered at his shrine, for he was a god who laid some special stress on the fierce, impatient side of things. And on great festivals, powdered nutmeg was strewn in front of his hutch, an important feature of the offering being that the nutmeg had to be kissed. He did not pretend to have the remotest knowledge as to what an Anabaptist was, but he privately hoped that it was dashing and not very respectable. After a while, Conradin's absorption in the tool shed began to attract the notice of his guardian. "It is not good for him to be pottering down there in all weathers," she promptly decided, and at breakfast one morning she announced that an outbreak of rage and sorrow, which she was ready to rebuke with a flow of excellent precepts and reasoning. But Conradin said nothing. There was nothing to be said. Something, perhaps, in his white, set face gave her "sometimes," said Conradin. In the shed that evening there was an innovation in the worship of the hutch god. Conradin had been wont to chant his praises. Tonight he asked a boon. As Sredni Vashtar was a god, he must be supposed to know. And choking back a sob as he looked at that other evening in the dusk of the tool shed, Conradin's bitter litany went up. "Do one thing for me, Sredni Vashtar." Mrs. de Ropp noticed that the visits to the shed did not cease, and one day she made a further journey of inspection. "What are you keeping in that locked hutch?" "I believe it's guinea pigs. I'll have them all cleared away." Conradin shut his lips tight, but the woman ransacked his bedroom till she found the carefully hidden key and forthwith marched down to the shed to complete her discovery. It was a cold afternoon, and Conradin had been bidden to keep to the house. From the stationed himself. He saw the woman enter, and then he imagined her opening the door of the sacred hutch and peering down with clumsy impatience. And Conradin fervently breathed his prayer for the last time.
Do one thing for me, Sredni Vashtar.
But he knew, as he prayed, that he did not believe. He knew that the woman would come out presently with that pursed smile he loathed so well on her face, and that in an hour or two the gardener would carry away his wonderful god, a god no longer, but a simple brown ferret in a hutch. And he knew that the woman would triumph always as she triumphed now, and that he would grow ever more sickly under her pestering and domineering and superior wisdom. Till one day, of his defeat, he began to chant the hymn of his threatened idol.
Sredni Vashtar went forth. His thoughts were red thoughts, and his teeth were white. His enemies called for peace, but he brought them death. Sredni Vashtar the Beautiful.
And then, of a sudden, he stopped his chanting and drew closer to the window pane. The door of the shed still stood ajar as it had been left, and the minutes were slipping by. They were long minutes, but they slipped by, nevertheless. He watched the starlings running and flying in little parties across. Watched. Hope had crept by inches into his heart, and now a look of triumph began to blaze in his eyes, and the paean of victory and devastation.
His thoughts were red, and his teeth were white.
Rewarded. Out through that doorway came a long, low, yellow and brown beast, with Conradin dropped on his knees. The great polecat ferret made its way down to a small brook at the foot of the garden, drank for a moment, then crossed a little plank bridge and was lost to sight in the bushes. And during the toasting of it, and the buttering of it with much butter, and the slow enjoyment of eating it, Conradin listened to the answering chorus of wondering ejaculations from the kitchen region, the scattering footsteps and hurried embassies for outside help, and then, after a lull, the sacred sobbings and the shuffling life of me. And while they debated the matter among themselves, Conradin made himself another piece of toast. Well, that just goes to show the truth of that old adage, a ferret in the hand is worth two down the trousers. Until we meet again, good night and pleasant dreams. The Late Alfred Hitchcock Presents is presented by the late Alfred Hitchcock with the help of the actor Michael Roberts. It is produced by Frank Sterling at Unique for Radio 7.